everybody. Listening to the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Steve Morey.
And I'm Shelley Duvall.
You're not Shelley Duvall. You're Alexander McKenzie.
I don't think Shelley Duvall is Shelley Duvall right now, so
Shelley Duvall looks very old.
Yeah.
Very old. But it was shocking today. Steve, I was on your Plex earlier today. You've been catching those series of British first 80s and then the 90s hits documentaries. Yeah. And they had Sean Ryder from the Happy Mondays. Oh my God. Kids, don't do drugs. Don't do drugs. Don't do drugs. The dude is only 4 or 5 years older than me. Don't do drugs. Don't. Oh my God!
And does he look like Keith Richards accidentally sat in the sun for too long?
No, because he's like he's like balloons, but it's not a healthy ballooning. It's really
so more like
really
an edema,
prepared.
like he's got edema and he actually only eats like a cracker a day, but it's
from
all
the neck up.
liquid.
Yeah, it's like really bad. It's really sorry. Let me do it again for the edit there, Steve, since you talked over me. We are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You're hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in. And that was the most awkward intro ever, but I don't care because we're on Monday for the first time.
Yeah, that's why we're
weird. This is weird.
Monday.
When we get together on the Thursday nights, that's like the opening act to the weekend. I don't know what that'll do for me tomorrow. We got some interesting shirts here. Let's start with Steve. Steve, what are you wearing there?
I'm wearing just a beautiful TARDIS pastiche that says Time Traveler on it. So I actually got a compliment on this when I was in Asheville today. I walked into a chocolate store called Chocolate Fetish, which was beautiful and amazing, by the way. And if you're in Asheville, North Carolina, go to it. It is incredible. And immediately somebody was like, TARDIS, I love your shirt. So I was like, yeah.
Okay.
And you run away.
No, then we engaged in conversation, and I learned all sorts of really cool things about Asheville.
All right, let's go over to Caleb. Caleb, what wholesome t-shirt do you have on there?
I'm actually making a t-shirt debut. I've never worn this before, so it's new for the show. But I actually wanted to wear this like for the first of Pride Month, so I ordered a new Tom of Finland t-shirt. Tom of Finland being a quintessential gay artist, but one of my favorite artists. And so I did some Google sleuthing and actually found the Tom of Finland store, picked this up. But there was something with the shipping, so I ended up not getting it until last week. But I get to wear it for the end of Pride Month. So just rocking my Tom of Finland.
Cool. And I am wearing, if you can tell here, this is the movie poster of the original Halloween from 1978. Not the biggest horror movie fan, but this is a movie I absolutely adore and have seen so many times. And
Jamie Lee Curtis
got it. Well, she basically invents a stock character. That's something amazing. You rarely see that. And me saying stock character, I'm not really disparaging it. Have seen variations of Laurie time and time again, but she was the first, and by my estimation, still the best.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And I always thought that it was a great film for people who don't like horror films, too.
Yeah.
I mean, slasher movies, kind of, because it is essentially a slasher movie. And those are always the hardest ones to watch for me. Like I don't enjoy modern slasher movies, but give me like the early Friday the 13th, Halloween, the original prom night with Jamie Lee Curtis and Leslie Nielsen. I mean, those are great. Those are a lot of fun. My Bloody Valentine, like the first one. But modern ones I just can't watch. I don't know, maybe because they're too sadistic.
Could be. I also felt that Scream was in some ways a tribute and also a farewell.
Yeah.
Because any slasher film of note after that is so extreme. Scream kind of just like tied it in a bow, I thought. Yeah. At least the first two.
No.
I don't even think I saw anything after the first two.
I agree with that completely. I actually saw something, a tweet that falls into that category since we've gotten here. But Scream was one of the slasher film, like it tied slasher in with like the whodunit genre. And I don't, I think that had been done before, but I don't think it had been done in like the blockbuster way that Scream did it. So Scream really changed something in the way that horror movies were depicted for a long time. I think like they're shifting again in the way that we're looking at horror right now, but Scream really morphed it for about a decade and a half.
Well, this is whole weird the mode that we've been in for some time of these horror films that are made for teenage girls on Friday nights,
right.
that are all PG-13, and the scariest moments you find in the trailer. I think there's been great horror films in the last few years that don't fall in that bucket. Absolutely. But, I would never put myself out as any kind of expert because there's major horror films I've never seen because spooked.
And there are some really great podcasts out there that I'm my brain is not allowing me to remember the names of them. But if you're really interested in horror films, and especially the obscure horror films that might be, premiere on Shudder and nowhere else, there are some great podcasts out there. So do a Google search and check them out.
It's also the kind of thing where there's something for everybody now.
Yeah.
I love found footage films. They're not always well done, but I think they're always interesting. And when they fail, sometimes they're even more interesting because of why they failed. The last movie that I say like I had to stop watching was Audition, the Japanese film.
Oh,
that was really hard to get through, and I didn't. But there's some films like Midsummer. I know I would love that.
Yeah,
I still haven't gotten to it. There's out of the queue of I'll get to it films. Probably horror is the biggest chunk there.
Yeah.
I mean, just to say, like the number one movie in the U.S. for the past several weeks has been a monster movie, so Quiet Place 2, which it's great. It was a great film. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the first one, which took me a little while to see, but that's about it. Because every time that there's a jump scare in any movie, like I squeal and jump in my seat, and people don't really enjoy being in a movie theater with people who do that unless they're all teenage girls, I guess.
I'm a squinter. That's me.
Yeah,
where you're not doing this, but you're basically doing that.
Like my eyes are just open enough to say like, yes, I'm watching it. Yeah.
I grimace.
You know it's coming.
I grimace, but I don't know if it's because I'm actually grimacing because of what's on screen or the fact that I watch these movies with my husband, and anytime there's a jump scare, he tries to break my hand.
Yeah,
and because Raj is the world's worst. Like he won't squeal. He squealed one or two times, but he will just like death grip my hand, and I'm like it's like being next to somebody in labor. You're just like stop.
I mean that's better than Jason, who will give me, if I accidentally invite him to a horror movie, I will get a death glare, usually during and then after and then forever. I took him to see Brightburn. Never again.
Not intended for it. No. Actually, though, my biggest jump scare to film was not a horror film. It was adaptation.
Okay.
Oh.
That was my biggest jump I ever. Yeah, I was like a little girl. I was like,
we actually already have a comment about this, probably because of what we're talking about from John Runyon. Giving those October vibes, loving it. Comic Book Bears Assemble. Thanks, John. But October. We're probably going to have to do some, maybe horror follow-up special. Usually in October we'll talk about horror comics, but maybe we can throw in a horror movie or two. Brightburn was the best Superman film ever. Ooh, I think no. It's probably the best Superboy movie. Guess what? There is no other Superboy movie, but
no.
Yeah.
No.
It actually, if you're watching Superman and Lois, that could very well have been the bean. I'm Canadian again. It could have well been the basically the story of oh God, who's the
it's not there, Steve. It's
basically the end.
Go,
Yeah,
move,
I mean, it could very well have been. We've seen
of that
some of
kid. There you
yes,
go.
of that kid. So
there you go.
But yeah.
Right.
We also David Toby has joined us as well.
Hello, David Toby.
Hello, David.
What were you saying, Caleb?
I haven't seen Brightburn for the simple fact that, and I've heard good things about it, but it's for the simple fact it's it's Garth Ennis's take, it's Frank Miller's take on, from what I understand, like I said, not having seen it, on the Superman gone bad, and I've gotten that in the comics. As I've gotten older, I've just fallen in love with what Superman is and what makes Superman so wonderful, and I just don't need that. I don't need the cynical take or the what if all hell happened.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to say, the moments that we've seen on Superman and Lois of John Henry Irons' reality, that I thought was fascinating.
Right.
I thought those elements were handled so well, maybe because there was so much mystery to it. And, they didn't elaborate on the backstory with the change and him aligning with the other Kryptonians. But I thought the visuals that were presented there, even though they're elements that we've seen time and time again with Caleb, as you alluded to, with works from those particular writers, and I know it was really interesting visuals that were married to the storyline there. Yep. All right. Yeah. Well, we talked about comic books in the slightest sense by talking about the writers. So we are not a film or a TV podcast. We are a comic book podcast. And to prove this, I will start with Steve, who is about to tell you about a book he read and he dug. There you go, Steve.
Oh, thanks. But yeah, if you're a movie podcast, we know some movie podcasts. We can talk about them later. Stone Fruit by Lee Lai. One of the things that I mentioned at the beginning of the month is that I'm really trying to really challenge myself and every week talk about a great queer graphic novel for every episode. And this was the latest, Stone Fruit. Lee Lai is a Canadian author and cartoonist. And this is a very, I think this is maybe not her first major publication, but it is definitely probably her most well-known. It just was published this year by Fantagraphics. And it's ostensibly is about a woman named Rachel and her partner, Braun, who is a trans woman. A white trans woman, and Rachel is Asian Canadian, and their relationship with each other, as well as Rachel's relationship with her sister Amanda and Amanda's daughter Ness. And I think this book takes those different relationships and displays them in a very interesting way. It's really just a snapshot of these women's lives. In a very tumultuous and emotional part of their lives, where the relationship between Braun and Rachel is starting to fall apart because of Braun's severe depression and a lot of the issues that she hasn't been able to work out since she came out to her family as trans and began living as a woman. And also the relationship between Rachel and her sister Amanda is very strained because Amanda is a single mother trying to raise her young daughter, who I believe Nessa is about 6 years old. And she can't be there for her daughter a lot. So she has Rachel and, of course, by extension, Braun, frequently babysit and take care of her daughter for, hours every day, several days a week. And is feeling resentful because she doesn't get to enjoy the quality, wonderful time with her daughter that she would love to. And by the time she gets her daughter back, she's been working all day and she's exhausted. Her daughter is just like, I had a great time. I'm ready for bed now. And just feels that she's missing out on her daughter's development and her daughter's, life. And a lot of things happen throughout the book between the different women and the different characters. Braun, unfortunately, goes back to her family, and her family is very religious, and obviously her transition was not accepted, especially by her mother. And there's some very interesting, tense moments there. And then Rachel, of course, in the depression that she starts to experience because Braun has left and is, finding herself, she struggles with her relationship with herself at that point. And Ness, unfortunately, the young daughter, has to witness this, and has to find a way to kind of connect back with her Aunt Rachel in a way that she can find that joy again that she seems to have lost when she's lost Braun. And I think in the course of the book, you really go through a lot of emotions. You feel different ways about the characters at different points. And I think Lee Lai does such an amazing job of making you dislike a character when you should dislike a character, and then sympathize with them when you really do get to see sort of, peel away the layers and understand why they are the way they are. And it's a fascinating read, and it's really just like a fascinating development and evolution of these characters, understanding of themselves and their interactions with the relationships of the women in their life. And it's very fascinating. Art wise, the art is really interesting. All of her characters, the way that she draws them, everyone looks tired except for the daughter, the niece. And the niece, especially when she's in her mode imagining, and when there's an imaginative sequence that's happening, she draws the characters as almost like lizard people, at just running through the brush and looking bizarre and strange, and like creatures out of some interesting thing. And it's basically that's the imagination at work. That's what's happening in Ness's head when she's having these adventures with her aunts. And it's very fascinating. And there are times you can tell sometimes by how things are starting to be drawn where we are, like whose perspective and the energy that's happening. And I think it's beautiful. So Stone Fruit by Lee Lai, I do recommend it. If you find a copy, you can probably get it online in some places if your store doesn't carry it. But Fantagraphics, did just come out, so I recommend taking a look for it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to pick that.
Yeah.
All right, over to Caleb. Caleb, tell us about something you're reading that you're enjoying.
So I'm about to say what is probably the understatement of the century. X-Men has gotten weird. It went bananas. And so I wanted to talk about it because these are like Hickman and Duggan and the whole crew has kind of, Nick Dragata and Dowderman and Pepe Larraz, they have elevated, they've taken the X-Men and they have elevated them past a point that I think we've ever seen them as far as their stature goes in the cosmos. And so I was kind of struggling on which book to actually talk about because there's two of them that really showcase this. There's Planet-Sized X-Men, which just came out, I think, 2 weeks ago. And there is X-Men number 21, which is either the week before last. I think I'm about a week and a half. So both of these should have been on the shelf for about 2 weeks now. So, spoilers, but I try not to do too much of that. And I was almost hesitant to talk about these because I really don't, for me personally, I don't like talking about X-Men on y'all's show without Brian. That one was good. That is one of the best single issues. And it also reminded me of some theories that I have. But he was showing, I think, it was X-Men number 20 with that great cover of Nimrod. But I didn't talk about these because Brian's not here, and I love listening to Brian talk about X-Men, so I kind of feel bad. So I hope he doesn't get mad at me for talking about this. But so essentially what happens, we are in the middle of what's called the Hellfire Gala. The Hellfire Gala is taking place, obviously, on Krakoa. But everybody and their brother got invited to this thing, not just mutants. There are the allies of mutants, the Avengers, the enemies of the mutants are there. The Araco mutants aren't really there, but they're around, but they're just kind of they're going to go do their own thing. And that's some of their, because they're going to start a war no matter where they're at, right? So they can't really come to the party, and they're not really into the fashions. So I mean, what are they going to do? So the mutants are having this party, but with all things that are happening right now with the mutants, everything has a point to it, right? Like there are machinations afoot, and you see them come full bore. And I guess the best way to put it, when you can, these two books happen at the same time, right? Like as far as like timeline goes, they are happening at the same time. One is from the perspective of the actual Hellfire Gala, and the other one takes place on a planet that is fairly close to ours as far as the solar system. Kind of red. You may have seen it, but it's Mars, and they are the mutants have literally. They've terraformed Mars, or they're in the process of terraforming an entire planet, and it's because they've got to do something with these Araco mutants. The island of Araco is jammed right up next to Krakoa, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, now there's like 7 million more mutants, and people are kind of worried because nation states and nukes and things, and mutants that can move mountains with their mind. And so they're like, okay, like what are we going to do? We're gonna terraform Mars, because of course that's the most logical thing. And in an amazing way, Dugan does something that Hickman capitalized on, and like gives us the the fastball special from hell. Like he's taking all of these different mutants and their powers, and he is juxtaposing them and combining them in ways that we've never seen before. The ways that I don't think any of us in our most fanboy moments could ever fathom, to the point, and that's why it's taken so long. It's why only Hickman and Dugan has done it. That's planet size, right? So now there's literally they have their own planet, and there's lots of things that they are going to be able to do with it. I'm curious to see what happens. Now the other side, that's kind of the outlook. The other book, X-Men 21, looks inward. It takes a closer look to what's happening during the Hellfire Gala, in these events leading up to everything. And the book starts, to my delight. The book starts us off with Namor. I like Namor. I love Namor. He's a fun character. Do that whole thing where we list out top 5. I dig him. Like I'm sitting here reading the Defenders. He's a cool character, and he's fun to look at for me. But so he's doing this whole thing where he's been invited. He's got some ties to the mutants, if you remember X-Men Red. So he's got some. There's a link there, but he's a sovereign. Like he's the most. He's the most
mutant.
Right. Yeah. He's the most sovereign of sovereigns. Like the dude's got his, and got the attitude to match. And so essentially his role here, he's been invited by Xavier and Magneto. They want to join forces. They're trying to link him in so that they have an ally, which is smart because, as Namor points out, I'm in control of 70% of the planet. Like you guys have dirt, but I've got literally everything else. So why wouldn't they want him as an ally? But he declines because he's not ready to, if he allies himself with the mutants, then he's going to make enemies naturally elsewhere. And he makes a really interesting statement that, he is not. He's not ready to ally himself with a council that only pretends to be their peers. And there's an amazing moment because this is drawn by Nick Dragata, where as he says that, in the background you see the Illuminati, and that's who the ultimate snub for me is him saying that to Charles, and the way I take it to Magneto, saying I'm not ready to ally myself with a group of people who think they're my peers, and then walk over to the Illuminati, to that whole group, and stand with them. The giant middle finger. And
since I'm a little bit behind, who are the Illuminati at this point?
So as depicted here, it's kind of that classic lineup. So you've got Doctor Strange, you've got Cap, you've got T'Challa,
you have Cap.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
Okay.
he's standing with them, so I don't know if that means he's in the Illuminati. I take it to mean
Okay.
that.
Okay.
But who knows? And also I should say that Reed is also there.
Is Black Bolt?
Yeah.
Black Bolt's not in the picture.
Okay.
Which, surprisingly, because there are a few of the Inhumans left, they've been surprisingly absent during all of this, at least to my knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where they've been.
I've got a theory on it. I've got a few. I'm curious to see what happens. The rest of this book is just Hellfire goodness. And what the rest of the book takes, the impetus of it is we're going to get an actual team of the X-Men, whereas up until now, the X-Men have just been, they've been everybody. Whoever needs to be using a story, it's the entire mutant nation. But Jean links the entire mutant race telepathically, and they do this kind of caucus vote telepathically to decide who's going to be the team of the X-Men. And there are some figures that you can expect just based on the popularity. I mean, Rogue is in it. You've got obviously Cyclops and Jean are in it. But you have Wolverine, but it's the Laura. It's X-23. She's now an X-Man. You've got Sunfire. He's going to be an X-Man. You've got Sync, who was in what was that team called? He was in the team with Skin.
Generation X.
Generation X.
Yeah, Sync of Generation X fame.
The DC guys answering the. Okay.
Look, this is why we love you. This is why we love you. Look, he's in it with Laura, who, if you read a few issues back, he was stuck in the vault and fell in love with for over a century, but she doesn't know that because her memories didn't transfer. So lots of cool stuff leading up to what eventually has to become a culmination of some of the building blocks set up in Hoxpox, right? Like the issue that you held up a while ago, Bill, 20, it focused on Mystique and Mystique's relationship with her wife, who she wants back, who seemingly Xavier can't let come back because of Moira McTaggart, because he's keeping her away. And if Moira is found out by Destiny, then the timeline ends. Mm-hmm. So of all these things, being able to terraform a planet, being the biggest drug manufacturer in the universe, having the most clout, being the height of what the X-Men have ever been, I get the feeling, and I'm kind of interested to see how this works out, that it's actually going to be, love. It's going to be a relationship, specifically a queer relationship. That is the loose card in this house of cards that brings it all down. Cannot wait to see how they do that, and who knows how long it's going to be, but as we look at how large these things are, it's going to be loneliness and a simple human connection that destroys everything they've built. I think I'm totally just hedging my bets, but I cannot wait to see what happens. That's a lot of the story. You get some amazing art in all of these books. I cannot say enough good things about Pepe Larraz. That man, every time I see him, you just have to say Pepe Larraz is a beast. The texture that he puts down on the page, the backgrounds, the viewpoints, the focus that he uses in these things, it's not on model. And I've seen Pepe mostly do X-Men stuff, but the way that he draws Cap is gorgeous. It's absolutely stunning. His use of light, use of everything is hands down some of the best work you're going to see at Marvel today. Nick Dragotta does the intro, the Namor parts of this other thing. It's Nick Dragotta. You kind of tell that. It's interesting to see what he can do, especially if you only know Nick Dragotta mostly from East of West. He brings a little bit of that to it. Very digital, not crazy about the way that he draws Namor, just because Namor. I'm not in love with it, and I'm also not in love with Russell Dowderman. And I hate doing what I'm doing right now, like poo-pooing on something.
Yeah, that would be the Brian Pitter gay gasp there.
He would be yelling at you for that.
No, he wouldn't be yelling because he'd be on the floor. Or there'd be Brian and Brian beside himself. There'd be two of them.
I deserve it. I'm just yeah. When you look at some of the other things, especially with the Hellfire Gala and the fashion that you've seen come out of that, Dodderman's work just doesn't stand up to that, and it's not on par for me with what you're seeing in Pepe Larraz and in some of the other stuff. It's not bad by any means. It's just in the shadow of, if that makes sense. But something interesting that he does throughout 21 is he places celebrities all throughout the book, which
Yeah.
and they're photorealistic. Like there's one scene where like Mark Marone is in the background, just having a mustache, just being Mark Marone, not doing anything. There's another one where Kevin
What,
Feige.
do you mean Mark Maron?
Yes, Mark Maron. Sorry,
Okay. Mark Maron?
yeah. There's another scene. Maron Marone. I always thought it was Marone.
Maron.
Maron.
Yeah, it's Maron.
There's another scene where Kevin Feige just has a conversation with freaking Cyclops, and he's like, "Hey, what's your story, kid?" And Cyclops is like, "It's complicated because it is." so that's fun. It's fun seeing these figures scattered in and about. The book ends with fireworks, literally, and I'm just enjoying it. And there's not many of these books down the line that aren't fun. Corp is blowing it up. It's good times.
Yeah. I think I'm pretty much caught up with everything up to, obviously this week,
I'm
and
so
this
not caught up.
haven't come out yet. But I mean, there's some stuff because the Hellfire Gala, all the issues that are tied into it are all happening at the same time. It kind of plays with that very interestingly, because you have like characters that are appearing in the background of some issues where things are happening, and you kind of only get a glimpse of them before then it moves on with the focus of that issue. But there's some interesting things going on with Lara related to what happens in the latest issue of New Mutants, where she gets brought in kind of towards the end of it. This is, of course, after she's been made a member of the new X-Men team. So it's there's some interesting little things in there. And then, of course, in X-Corp, what's happening with Fenris shows up and causes a mess. But it's just it's really interesting, really really bizarre. Excalibur, what's going on with Excalibur and the UK? Shocking. I didn't see that coming, to throw in that kind of politics. But yeah, very very neat concept for a crossover event.
And how about Braddock's moments, birthful moments?
Oh yeah, like, you're going to give birth to this idea. Oh yes, he is. Yeah, he certainly is.
We took literally on that one.
So we had the opportunity to do the accents, and we didn't.
Oh,
Rebecca!
Oh, I'm giving birth to a giant space station. Labor pains.
All right, reel
it
it back a bit there, son. Okay, that was a bit too much. One reason I have to say is I'm not on top of current X-Men as much as I'd like to be, is because I've kind of been on a binge of filling in the gaps of some X-Men stuff here. Yeah. There's some keys I'll never have, but I think people would be shocked at how many X-Men books I actually have. Now, I'm just wondering if I have what the plan going forward is. 21 is the last issue written by Hickman,
right?
And then the next #1 is by Jerry Duggan,
right?
And then there's an Inferno series that we don't know the exact structure of it, but that Hickman is going to oversee. Is that correct?
Yes,
I believe so.
Okay.
There's also there's a Trial of Magneto miniseries that's coming out pretty soon as well. I'm not sure if it's going to tie in with Inferno or if it's just going to be kind of a satellite situation. But I mean, if Inferno is going to be Hickman's focus, then I'm sure it's going to have tie in everything that's going on in the other books. But it is interesting to see the flagship X-Men title ending already and starting with a new #1. but it's not the first one. Cable is also ending with issue number 12.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
There was
that's
another
been so
book
irregular.
there was another book that they
X Factor, I think.
suggested that 12 from the solicits for the trade was.
I think it's X Factor.
I think it's X Factor, yeah.
Yeah, which pisses me off. But like, give X Factor a break. Come on, stop bringing them back, teasing us, and then canceling it.
Yeah,
it's annoying.
Okay,
that's just the X-Men legacy.
Yeah, the X-Men legacy. Cancel X Factor.
Put Peter David back on it.
I did cancel New Mutants on my own with 13 or so. I wasn't feeling it.
Yeah.
And if budget wasn't an issue, I'd be getting everything. And the reason budget is an issue is because I get every goddamn DC book that there is. Just read DC in the interim from our last show to this one, so I'm only going to be talking about DC because that's the only fresh books that I've read. I'm sorry, but I'm known for it, so here we go. And a book that Caleb talked about a few weeks ago, which was Challenge of the Super Sons, is an example of basically taking core characters and providing some sense of a tour around the DC universe using those characters and their interactions with the others. And there's something very similar going on in The Flash right now. And if you've been reading The Flash, you'll know that Wally is once again the Flash. Barry's working with that group of the quasi-Illuminati. And though he is part of the Justice League, he is taking a bit of a backseat as the main Flash. And this coincided with Wally taking up the mantle again somewhat reluctantly. And then the Speed Force messes with him and he's caught on a time loop. Barry and Green Arrow and Mr. Terrific are monitoring him as he's bouncing into the bodies of other speedsters at different points in time. So it's a great device to perform this. We've had him in the past, in the Age of the Dinosaurs. We've had him in the future where he took over Impulse's body. And in this issue, as you can tell here with Jay Garrick, he takes over Jay Garrick's body right smack dab in the middle of World War II. And the book is written by Jeremy Adams, and the art is it's split in this issue by Jack Herbert and Brandon Peterson. And what we have in this issue is effectively a team up between Jay Garrick and another Golden Age character of the Golden Age version of the Ray. The Ray's an interesting counterpoint to Jay because he is one of the fastest, because he operates at the speed of light. One of the, though he's mostly known for the energy angle, he is also one of the fastest speedsters, certainly to rival Jay and you can't call him Quicksilver now, Max Mercury and Johnny Quick of the Golden Age characters. And those are characters that have never really had interactions before. When the Ray was created, he was part of the Quality line of characters and was not DC owned until the mid-50s. And they've kind of kept a bit of segregation there throughout time with DC, by, having some, almost like, a meta thing where the Freedom Fighters were effectively operating separately from the All-Star Squadron. There are other precedents through other retcons over time. And what we have here is, you'll see a very surprised Jay there. He's shocked, and the person pointing his finger at him is Adolf Hitler, the biggest villain we've ever had in comic books and the world. And they tie in a lot of points of reference from not so much classic Golden Age stories, but classic Golden Age retcon stories, like the origin of the Justice Society that was first revealed in the late 70s. And there's some allusions to the Golden Age, the actual miniseries by James Robinson and Paul Smith. And it's a really interesting take on how Wally sees himself in Jay's eyes and vice versa. Because Jay was very much a mentor to him on a personal level in some ways, because of Jay's effective, foster fathering of Impulse. In some ways just as close to Barry, and plus Barry was gone for so long. There's not a lot of commentary about the Jay Wally connection, and it's also Wally seeing Jay in his prime, not as an older man. And I'm gonna spoil something. Jay gets to punch Hitler. Okay.
Yay.
You have to love stories where Hitler gets punched. And also a team up with two characters in the Ray and Jay Garrick who don't really know each other. This was manipulated by FDR, thinking that these would be two characters that work well together, and they're not adversarial, but they just don't even know each other. And when you have that situation, on top of them being put in very precarious, life-threatening situations, it was really well done how it covered that terrain, and it also kept the main story of Wally's body jumping,
quantum leaping, basically.
Yeah, effectively, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like using that because I didn't like that series too much. The last page, also with a one page drawn by Kevin McGuire, will make any fan of the late 70s TV superhero shows very happy. The next issue is going to be, I think, insanely fun. But even if you don't have familiarity with the Earth 2 characters, I'll talk about them a bit more with another book I'm talking about. I think you'd get a lot out of this story because there's so much terrain outside of that is covered very well. This guy Jeremy Adams, I got to say, after we've had Joshua Williamson on for so long, it was a case like Dan Sly kind of overstayed his welcome a bit in my eyes, and there were certain things that just repeated. I'm very glad we have a new writer on the regular Flash story, and also very clearly a writer who loves these characters. So
that's good.
I like this a lot.
Hey, Bill.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Steve.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that Jay's face in this one is just so shocked that he is so massively stacked. I thought he was looking in a mirror going, holy Jesus, I got some thick X. I mean, he's got a body there to rival an Alex Ross Shazam. Dear Lord.
Yeah.
The Ray is pretty. The Ray is pretty ripped too.
Thick with two C's.
Could be the way the artist draws it. Yeah, you also have Rip Shirt Jay, if that makes you happy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So, Bill, my question to you, I wanted to lean on your kind of DC expertise for a little bit because I don't have that. But the Ray that I know, I guess, is just the regular, or the regular Earth Ray, and he's a gay man, or at least as I've read him, he's an out character. So, and now you've got Jay Gordon in RDC as an out character. Was there any exploration of that at all? I mean,
no, because this version of the Ray is arguably his father. We'll have to see how things play out. If it was the New Earth, whatever the hell we ended up with after Infinite Crisis. Before Infinite Crisis, it was his father. With the way time has moved on, the daddy would have been like in his 70s banging it for this guy to come out. So we'll see how that plays out. Maybe his grandfather, we just don't know. But it's Ray Terrell. This is Happy Terrell.
Gotcha.
Okay.
And that wasn't obvious to other people, and if so, I apologize. But from my layman's kind of view, maybe it's not. Maybe other people wanted to know about that too. So thank you for.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, with what we've had since Rebirth is a kind of unspooling of where we're at.
Right.
Spooled it back up with the weird ass shit that went down with Future State. And there's a bunch of references that we've had that I think we're going to have a clear sense of continuity after things settle. But that's open. I'll put it that way. Yep.
The kitty agrees.
Who's that?
That's Mavunwi. She is at the door, wanting in to join. But
before you do that, why don't you tell us about another book that been interested in.
So I picked this up on a whim because I had no idea what it was about. I didn't know anything about this book. And I was just sort of like, hey, you know what? Why not pick up something that just really from the title, I was like, yeah, why not? And that is Save Yourself #1, written by Bones Leopard, with art by Kelly and Nicole Matthews. I was very pleasantly surprised by this book. One, it does feature several queer characters, which was a surprise to me. I was like, oh, well, okay, well, I picked up the right one for this month. But ostensibly, it is about the main character, Gigi, who works at a cafe with her best friend, Sean, and their boss, Bear, who is a genderqueer trans character who kind of owns this really great cafe that's hosting singles nights in this first issue. And Gigi, unfortunately, she is all alone, single, at home, playing video games when she's called into work as a ruse to have her, finally, meet somebody. And because she's a young lesbian girl who doesn't really get out much. Obviously, her coworkers think that she could really, do well in this singles situation. But as she's running to go to the cafe, she runs into this absolute gorgeous Amazon of a woman with bright pink hair, and they have a moment, and she just immediately gets flabbergasted and is like, "Oh my god, I love you!" But they're running. This woman who we find out later on is named Mia has to run. She's gone. She's out of there, and Gigi's like, "Oh my god, I've just met the love of my life. Don't know her name. Probably will never see her again." And then ends up going back to the cafe to enjoy her best friend and boss trying to play matchmaker. Well, in this reality, there is a trio of alien, I would say, magical girl superheroes that have supposedly been protecting the planet from evil space monsters from outer space that, have been destroying planets all across the galaxy. And they've arrived and have been operating on Earth for several years to save them and, fight the bad guys when they show up. Totally, Sailor Moon, Power Rangers, everything style. Well, they're not exactly what they seem. They seem to have ingrained themselves in everything, in popular culture and, commerce, everything. They sell perfume. They have a corporation, all these things. Well, turns out they're actually kind of evil. And we witness this, as does Gigi, when they're fighting some monsters. She, sneaks over to that part of town so she can actually watch the action. When this giant dragon creature and this giant shark creature are all fighting the trio. Well, one of the trio ends up getting her butt kind of slammed off towards where Gigi is hiding, along with some other, rando street pedestrian. And she reaches out to the street pedestrian and basically is like, "I'm hungry. I need your energy." And absorbs him, basically kills him, so that she can take her energy. And Gigi sees all this, and so she's actually learned something that's very dangerous to know, as we know in comic stories like this. But she almost gets crushed by a building, and when she comes to, she sees this giant pink dragon creature who's trying to keep her safe, and it turns out it is that beautiful pink mohawked Amazon that she ran into earlier. That's right, they're not villains, they're not creatures of evil that the trio is fighting against. In fact, they are representatives of the galactic police force that have come to rescue Earth, and of course have to figure things out from there. But it's a great introductory issue. The art is gorgeous. It's got a very, very colorful, almost manga anime style to it. Lots of great splash pages, very beautiful compositions, and just great little moments here and there that just make me laugh and or smile. It's definitely a great quick read. And for this miniseries, also put out by Boombox, which has been putting out some amazing stuff over the years. I think that if you're into that kind of sort of magical girl style, I think you'll really enjoy this book. So Save Yourself, #1, just hit shelves this past week, and it'll probably be the usual, which is about 5 issues for the series put out by Boombox. So I recommend it. Give it a shot. You'll at least have some really beautiful pages here to look at.
Okay, cool. Yeah. All right, over to Caleb. Tell us about something else.
So I spoke about a little Marvel. So I'm going to take a page out of your book, Bill, and talk about a little DC. There is a series out right now, and it actually started as a digital first series at DC. It's called Truth and Justice, and I apologize for the glare for those of you who are watching. But each issue, as I take it, is a one shot, so it features a different character. They're going through a bunch of them. They started off with Vixen, but this one, and the reason I picked this up. And now I need to go back and collect the other ones. Is it stars my girl Kate Kane? It stars Batwoman. Saw it, and but look, not gonna lie, saw the Pride label up in the corner, and that grabbed my eye, and so I was like, let me check this out and see what this is about. And I'm glad I did, because it was really good. Look, our girl Kate Kane is tired. she needs a break. She needs a vacation. So she calls. She gets a hold of Maggie Sawyer, who a long time for her, on again, off again, part of her life. And she's like, hey, I'm going to your cabin up in the lake country. Like, call me if you get this message, but I've got to get away. Things are just too hectic. I'm overworked. I'm stressed. I'm going to go spend the weekend at the cabin. You can call me and yell at me if you want to. We can figure out things from there, but this is happening. I'm doing this. So she does, and she's heading up there, and she, right before she gets into the mountains, she gets this sleepy little town. And because cell phone service, she's going to pull off, make all the phone calls she needs to make, collect all the things she needs to collect, freshen up, have some lunch, do whatever. So she pulls off this little diner, and she goes in there, and she starts to kind of see things about this little town and hear things about this little town, and like a good small town, there's an urban legend to go with it, and there's a Mothman supposedly that has haunted this town, and she's Kate, she's a monster hunter, so she never takes a day off, really, so her her interest is piqued, and she's like, well, let me find out what's up with this Mothman that's terrorized this little town for centuries. And she talks to a bunch of town folk. She wanders around, and eventually what it boils down to is she's not quite sure if this is legend, this is myth, this is real. She just doesn't know. But it kind of solidifies when, out of nowhere, a giant dent ends up in the front of her car after asking too many questions about the Mothman. So now she's like, okay, now there's a monster here. I've got to figure this out. I've got to start tracking this thing down. So Kate Kane goes into the corner, and Batwoman walks out. And she starts doing some sleuthing. She starts going around in the night, and really always interesting to see a character like Batwoman, Batman, Spider-Man outside of a metropolitan area in the woods. Like, that's, there's only so much you can batarang and swing across when you have a tree. And for a kid like me who grew up in rural Arkansas, that, the tallest building I ever saw, and I think in Little Rock's like 26 stories, up until I got out. So tiny in any other place, but I couldn't really understand the gravitas of cities and understand what's actually happening when these characters fly through the skyscrapers. This is interesting to me, seeing them deal with very, small settings. She starts figuring out that all is not, some things aren't adding up. When all of a sudden she's blindsided, and she's blindsided by a character that, if you're familiar with Kate Kane, you should know. It's Nocturna. She's a vampire, and so they have their little duke it out moment. And it turns out Nocturna has been haunting. Nocturna's actually spoilers, the Mothman. She's been around for, this has been out for a while, so it shouldn't be too much of a spoiler as far as digital goes. But she, they have to duke it out. They have to figure out what's going on, and she's ultimately successful as things are. And whether or not she gets to have her vacation is to be determined. You'll have to go pick it up. But The book is written by some newcomers, at least from my perspective. I'm not familiar with the names. Grace Ellis writes it. Maria Laura Snappo is the artist. Wendy Broom does the colors, and Becca Carey does the letters. I've got no complaint with Snappo's art in this book. Those lines are wonderful. The action scene, like, for somebody who fell in love, I fell in love with Batwoman with Jeremy Hahn, his artwork. I think Snappo does a lot of justice to the people who have drawn this character. Her Kate Kane is everything you want her to be. She's a little bit bombshell, a little bit badass, and that's exactly what I want to see in Batwoman. So it's fun. It was really fun. So go pick up Truth and Justice.
Yep.
Well, Grace Ellis, she's one of the co-creators of Lumberjanes. So it's really cool seeing her on this book.
I forgot
about a superhero title. So that's pretty neat.
Oh boy, she wrote that book. Oh,
that book.
That book.
Oh, do you mean?
Yeah, that book.
This book?
Yeah, that book. Okay, I'm glad to hear there was a book from her that you enjoyed. And the conceit of Truth and Justice is these are people who have not done a lot of DC or mainstream work, getting opportunities. I believe it actually came through from pitches that some of these people had done, and they didn't accept them as to work on the main titles, but they thought there was something interesting in the pitches. So the previous physical issues of Truth and Justice had, as you mentioned, Vixen, Superman, John Constantine. This one with Robin. Okay. And I believe there's another one coming in the digital format. They are 3 issues long. And it's been nice to, not necessarily locked to continuity, plays with, concepts that fit within continuity. There's nothing that, throws it out. But they've been interesting. And, I do like this program of giving people a chance who haven't had the opportunities to work in mainstream comics, to do that on, major characters, pretty much. Yeah. So. Yeah, no, I am looking forward to that, and anything she can do to redeem herself, in my eyes after that book, I will very much look forward to.
Well, I didn't catch I'm disappointed in me because the name didn't click, but I liked Lumberjanes. I mean, I've got I've got a lot of Lumberjanes up in a long box somewhere, so there's definitely writing talent there.
Yeah.
What was that book?
Lois Lane and the Friendship Challenge.
No, but there was a word for it.
Oh, La Bamba. Okay.
We have some comments, some praise, of course, for Bill from John Runyon. Proud of you, Bill. Hashtag Marvel Trivia King. In reference to Caleb's earlier book with the X-Men. Where he also mentions Inhumans are just mad that mutants are back and stealing the show. That's my thought too. Can
you put up my comment that I provided to that?
Yeah, because this is a great one too. Bill has said, in conversing with John, I think the Inhumans were relieved by the Fox takeover, so they don't have the pressure on them to be the X-Men. Yeah. That, I think, is it. But from a writer's perspective, from the editing staff's perspective, they don't have to keep pushing this Inhumans bullshit as a replacement for the X-Men. Now it's all X-Men all the time. We have not seen one little bit or shred of Inhuman activity in any of the X titles since Hickman took over.
I think the only active Inhuman that I regularly see in what I read, which I don't read everything, is Miss Marvel and the Champions. That's pretty, there was a Lockjaw mini series 2 years ago by Kibblesmith, I think, which interesting. Lockjaw and somebody named Kibblesmith. That's why I remember it. Also, it had D-Man in it, and I love D-Man. D-Man, for me.
But do you remember they had so many Inhumans? They had so many Inhumans. They had the Inhumanity, and the IVX, and the Inhuman. Singular, and
like you said, I think they were trying to shoehorn them into a position to be the X-Men, and the Inhumans shouldn't be the X-Men, but that does not mean the Inhumans aren't good. Yep. The Inhumans are great. I mean, look, I will put Warren Ellis's Karnak up against a lot of books because it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with the Eternals. Don't try to make the Eternals something else.
Right. Yeah. Just let them be what they are.
Yeah.
And they're wonderful in that sense.
Okay. I'm going to talk about a book. And the book I'm going to talk about, and I believe you talked about this on Southern Fried Geekery, Caleb. Is this true?
Yeah, we did.
Okay, and this is Justice League Last Ride. I wish I had read this book for the last show because I definitely would have put this one in there. I absolutely love this book. It is written by Chip Zdarsky with art by Manuel Mendonça. I believe that's how you pronounce it, with the squiggle on the C, if my Spanish lessons were correct. And what we have in this story is the Justice League a few years from now. Something big has gone down, which has resulted in the death of one of the original members. And following that event and the series of other events, the Justice League have disbanded. They reunite because they did commit, if there was a legit true emergency call, that they would heed the call. And John Stewart, who is still in touch with the Green Lantern Corps naturally, has engineered them to reunite for a particular situation. The New Gods have been destroyed, and they have caught the individual, which is another major DC character, who was responsible for the death of the New Gods. And because of the intergalactic politics, they have to hide this character. The Green Lantern Corps are down to just a few bays. The United Planets have basically taken over the jurisdictional capacities in regards to being peacekeepers, law keepers, I guess. I don't know how that you want to, what parlance you want to use in the DC universe. So it's been interesting that they have had these things that are going on right now in the storylines, using them now and putting them in what may be their eventual result. The Chip Zdarsky, his writing blew me away in this. I believe the only times he's written group books, there was a short-lived Invaders series, which lasted for 12 issues, and then there was a fifth-week event with the Defenders, the Best Defense. I have all of them. I've only read the first half of Invaders, but after reading this, I'm definitely going to hit this stuff. The thing that really, really impressed me is, apart from getting the voices of Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman down perfectly, and the tension that's there. Of course, we've seen tension between Superman and Batman again and again and again in the past. In this case, this was probably the most realistic portrayal of that. At least the way that I have those two particular characters conceived in my head. And I thought it was really interesting in a way that he's showing how close these characters are to each other by showing them at their most fragmented. That was a really interesting device, and he didn't have a lot of bandwidth to do it. We're talking 20 pages here. Art is fantastic. There's a couple of genuine surprises here and there, which you're naturally going to get with a story that takes place a few years in the future. But absolutely blew me away. I absolutely love this book, and I cannot wait for the next issues. Yeah.
Zdarsky's
Zdarsky.
He's not a writer that I've historically been in love with until the last 3 years, and it really started turning around for me. Which you're talking about team books. I don't know that it technically qualifies as a team book, but his Marvel 2-in-1, where he wrote The Thing and Johnny, and exactly what you were talking about. He adopted and adapted those voices. So I was gobsmacked whenever he didn't write Fantastic Four, and they gave it to Slott, which I'm not reading it, so I can't tell you what that's been like. But I would have I would have transitioned over
Yeah.
had it been Zdarsky.
Yeah.
His Daredevil, I dropped off of it, but you mentioned Southern Fried Geekery. My co-hosts would sing that book's praises. The man's a power. Like he's very much. You can't call him an up and comer because he's just there.
There.
But
Yeah.
he's strong. Like
Yeah.
and he keeps working with amazing artists. And we read that book a few weeks ago and just blown away.
Yeah. And he also knows how to structure a single issue.
Right.
This is going to be a 6-issue miniseries, I believe. I believe it doesn't have the bannering, but I think it's 6 issues or so. And he just knows how to structure a single issue, whether it's a done-in-one or part of an overarching story. If people want to give a reference, I'm not exactly sure what the issue number is. I want to say either 5 or 7. But his series of Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man, there's an issue where J. Jonah Jameson, in his very compromised position that he's in right now, no longer the mayor of New York, no longer a media magnate, is going to interview Spider-Man, and he does so by cooking him lasagna for dinner. And which sounds like such a preposterous notion, but then there is actually an old concept in journalism that people talk when they're eating. And it's a wonderful done-in-one story. And he's just somebody that really has impressed me, even when it's something that doesn't really connect with me. Like you said, Daredevil. I gave the first issue a chance, and it just wasn't resonating with me. Other stuff that he's done definitely has. I think it's just, it's whether I love those characters or not,
Right.
Daredevil, Daredevil for me is like, he's kind of like David Bowie in that it's almost as if like he's as good as the people he's working with, and he's as good as the people that are on it, I probably could provide a better analogy than that, but
when it comes to Daredevil, I like his greatest hits. I don't need to listen to every album. I like the greatest hits album.
Yeah.
And I think you see a little bit of that. Like I picked up the book because Marco Cicchetto was doing the art, and I worship at the altar of Marco Cicchetto. He is a brilliant artist. Does bring something new and fresh, but also homages the greats in his work. So that's where I picked it up at and ran with it. But it's just you're talking about the story structure of Zdarsky books. He understands the mechanics of how to work the craft of it, how to work these pages. He like down to the page turn, and that's something that a lot of writers don't get. Like he can manipulate how you turn the page. That's amazing craftsmanship.
Yeah, and I think it's also interesting. Some of it I think is because he is an artist that he does know how to structure story from that standpoint, and is probably a very good writer for artists. But also, I mean, he's like incredibly funny and incredibly twisted. If anybody ever wants a good laugh, go to archives. I'm sure they're still online of him talking to the bots at Applebee's. Did you ever read this stuff, Caleb? Because this was an old 11 o'clock comics thread on the old forums.
No,
just go look and see if you can find Chip Zdarsky talking to the Apple Tree bots. They're brilliant. But I think because you are used to the humorous side, that when there is something serious, it's almost like actors that are comedians that are very good dramatic actors as well. And that's the kind of vibe I get with Chip, because there's a lot of heavy shit that goes down in this. It's not a joyful romp, but it also is a great superhero story, and with superheroes being superheroes, and I loved it.
So it's interesting you say that, though. I actually I like Zdarsky when he's not being funny. So and again, that's just differences, and I think the way that you and I read comics and some of the stuff we look for. But I don't think he's funny. And when he's funny, that's usually when he's trying to be funny. That's when he falls flat for me. when he's writing just a good, heart-filled superhero story.
Yeah.
Or I've read non-superhero comics by him that when he's getting down to the bare essence and he's actually throwing some humanity into it, and he's got a gravity to his story, and he's one of those writers that really can make you feel like the story has stakes. And in superhero comics, that's hard because we all know that they never go away, they're never going to die, like they're not actually any real danger.
Yeah.
He can make them feel like there's something at stake, and that's when I think he's the best.
Yeah.
That's when I love him.
To just go back to something else that you mentioned, I thought Marvel 2-in-1, that was a very good balance
Right.
of something that can be lighthearted at points, but also, like legitimately aware of the real life consequences that these characters would be facing.
Ben Grimm made me cry in that book, The Bastard. Like,
yeah. Yeah.
That's
okay. We're against the clock here a bit, but I do think we each have like another book we want to talk about. Do you want to just talk about them real quick?
Okay. Sure.
Yeah. All right. So, Steve, give us a quickie.
So, quickie is just I'm going to talk about a whole shit ton of books, really quick, and that is the War of the Bounty Hunters, massive crossover aganza. That's happening at Marvel right now in all of their Star Wars related titles. If you want to have,
is it High Republic?
High Republic is so outside of that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and
all of them that are in that continuity line.
Yes, which currently takes place right after Empire Strikes Back. They're all in that time period again, except for High Republic. Here's the checklist for you if you are hunting the current issues as well as back issues. It is going to continue until October.
That looks very post Hoxpox.
Yes, it is. It's about 40 some issues altogether, with the sort of the tying together miniseries and one shots that are part of it. Right now, like the latest issues before this week, we have the Bounty Hunters title, which I haven't read anything of. Issue number 13, sorry, and the main Star Wars title, issue number 14. The main premise behind everything is that Boba Fett had a little bit of a stop off to. I think it was Nar Shaddaa, which is basically just a criminal planet filled with various lowlifes from across the planet. It's like Mos Eisley, the planet, all across the galaxy. And he's there to fix Han's, basically carbonite slab because it starts to come unraveled a little bit. And so while he's there getting some cash together, somebody steals Han and sets off this massive bounty hunt throughout the galaxy because Jabba the Hutt thinks that Boba Fett has kind of screwed him over a little bit and he wants Han back. So he sends out an whoever can find it, just go ahead and bring me Han Solo and possibly kill Boba Fett while you're at it. Everybody gets involved in it. Obviously, Leia and the team do. They want to get Han back. They've been looking for Han since Bespin, and so they send Chewie, 3PO, Luke originally, but then he has to kind of do Luke things, whatever, and Lando are involved in now trying to figure out where Han is, but also how to find Boba Fett so they can supposedly, get him to tell them where Han is. Meanwhile, you've got other bounty hunters, Dengar and Valance and everybody. Okay, so everybody's doing this. Turns out, and I'm not going to spoil too much because now there's about 15 issues already out. The people behind stealing Han, Crimson Dawn. And we see Kira is back. So Kira, of course, from the Han Solo movie, she's back. She's taken over Crimson Dawn, and she's taken Han knowing exactly what kind of prize he is for everyone in the galaxy. So it's an interesting story. It's crazy. There's tons of action, tons, if you like Star Wars action, if you like obscure Star Wars characters, there's all of them happening here. And it's pretty interesting. It's insanely expensive if you're going to try to get all of them, which I guess I'm going to have to do. But if you're a big Star Wars fan, it's definitely worth it. If you're a mediocre Star Wars fan, stick to the books that you want to read, the titles that you want to read. I'm sure there's going to be enough summarizing going on that you'll get the gist of what's happening in the other titles. And if you're not a Star Wars fan, what are you doing?
I'll take the codes.
I think there are codes. Yes, there are.
Yes,
there are digital codes. So yeah.
Yes, okay. Anyway, one thing I think is really interesting about Marvel's plans with Star Wars, and this was something nobody knew until last year, was that they're dedicating 5 years to a time period. So what we had in the main Star Wars book and the ancillary books before was what happened between A New Hope. I hate calling it that, but A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back. Now we have The Empire Strikes Back and what eventually will be Return of the Jedi. And then in 2025, I believe, is when we get into what happens after Return of the Jedi. And plus, this stuff is all canon. This is all worked out with Lucasfilm, and they have a whole canon department, and it's nice that there's comics there to fill in gaps, because these are important stories to tell, and this is really cool that it's like pulling together things, as you mentioned, from Solo with this. And I also find it very interesting that Han is a main character, and at the whole time he's like this.
He's literally frozen
him and he's not there. Yeah.
So there's and everything is about him and what's going to happen to him. But yeah, he has no agency in this, and we know, obviously, anybody who's seen Return of the Jedi, that for that 5 year period, at least as far as we know, he's been frozen the whole time.
I'm saying in our years, 5 years. I believe with them it's 3.
3. Yeah, it is 3.
I believe it's about 3 years. Yeah.
But during that time
period, whatever that designation they have for a year there, I forget what it's called.
How do they figure out years?
Like the whole thing. Well, I know there's I think they eventually started going with I think they eventually started going with a year, and like everything is like the BBY is the big designation before Battle of Yavin. So that's almost like our BC. So interesting stuff, but I'm glad they're doing something like this. Wish it wasn't so expensive for you, but
exactly. But it is exciting. It's kind of fun, and like you said, it's all canon. So if they bring in and tie in some stuff, there's nothing really stopping other Star Wars media from pulling from it. So you might see Ferric, show up. So
and they should pull from it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, over to Caleb. Caleb, tell us about a quick book there.
Well, just back to that, I have a theory that if there's a single person that ever figures out immortality, it'll be Craig Lance, because he's going to refuse to die until Star Wars is just done. And I hope that's my bestie, and I love him. So I spoke on a bunch of superhero stuff tonight, which is ironic because superhero is not necessarily my bread and butter these days. I read a lot of other stuff. From Boom Studios, a series just wrapped up. It's called Origins. I don't remember if I've spoken about this on y'all's show or on Bears or not. The book was a lot of fun. It was knuckin' futz. The book is created. It's created by Aresh Emil, Lee Krieger, and Joseph Oxford, but that's just who created the story, which makes me think it was probably a screenplay or something along those lines. It was adapted into comic form by Clay Chapman, Jacob Rebekla, and Patricio De Pelci, with letters by Jim Campbell. So just real quick, the 30,000-foot view. It's a 6-issue series. All of them are out now. You can get the trade. It's super fun. It's a post-apocalyptic story where humanity has been is extinct, and nature has taken back over the world. There's been enough time that nature has reclaimed everything, except before humanity went extinct, they created artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence that, by its design, could exist without humanity. but it operates under the laws of robotics, right? And so these AI, specifically an AI that is set up in one of the Smithsonian's, goes about its business of trying to rebuild a human and bringing a person back into the world. So it pulls genetics, it pulls DNA from bones that it finds throughout the world, leftovers in subway systems, what have you. And eventually, after many, many mistrials, it is successful. It creates human life. And it raises this human life as its own, and then raises it to protect it, to usher it forward, with the idea that it's going to be the new Adam in a sense. But it's trying to, it doesn't go so far as to create any type of like helpmate. If you're thinking about like Genesis, to reintroduce humanity to the world, it just creates this. The only problem is that nature essentially is looking out. Like nature has also got its little tentacles into technology, and nature is doing what it needs to ensure that humanity, which nature sees as its greatest threat, as the humankind as an apex predator to this to nature, as it wants to ensure that it's never going to come back. And so it enacts defense mechanisms once it realizes and recognizes that a real human is back. And so much of the story is just running from nature trying to kill it. You get to see this great world, gorgeous remnants of the real world that we know. You get to see this what it would look like if the Smithsonian was reclaimed by nature, done in gorgeous watercolors, digital watercolors. Let me just caveat that. Which, and I'm a fan of watercolor, but technology is reaching the point to where they can do digital watercolor really well. Replica, phenomenal artist. I cannot wait to see what else Lucas does. Very interpretive. He takes a very loose view to everything, which is what you want with watercolor, digital or traditional. You could see AI, you could see these robots and these robot societies that have kind of banded together for survival, to take care of one another. And eventually what you see is just the human spirit, the heart, that and the willingness to just be, I think, is the ultimate takeaway from the story. But Origins, 6 issues, like I said, go check it out. Fun stuff, and surprisingly like happy for a post-apocalyptic story.
Yep.
Okay. The last book I want to talk about, I will be quick about this, is Stargirl Spring Break Special. If you missed the Jeff Johns of old, he's here in full throttle. Again, Stargirl is a character that he created based upon his real-life sister, Courtney, who tragically died in a plane crash, and the character itself is a tribute to her. And the art here is by Todd Nauck, who also has a history with this character, drawing her at various points. And it's a spring break special. The actual title of the story is The 7 Soldiers of Spring Break. What we have here is a reunion of the 7 Soldiers of Victory, which was a team that her stepfather Stripesy was part of. And what goes on in this story is a grouping together of the current version. Some of them are the same people, but the current versions of those same characters. So we have Green Arrow, we have Red Arrow taking Speedy's place, we have Vigilante, we have a very woofy Sir Justin the Shining Knight, we have the current version of the Crimson Avenger, Stripe, who formerly Stripesy, and Stargirl taking the Star Spangled Kid spot. And it literally is spring break. They go from Blue Valley, Nebraska to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina for this reunion that involves characters from their past. I don't want to give too much away. There's an amazing reveal about Green Arrow in this story. An amazing reveal that is so much fun and makes so much simple sense. It involves time travel and time disruptions. They basically have to preserve the legacy of the original Crimson Avenger. In the retcon world, the Crimson Avenger now occupies the space that Superman did, in that he's the first superhero of the DC universe. So there's a lot of importance. There's a wonderful bit in Justice League and in Aztec in Grant Morrison that when they swear somebody in, they do it in front of the Crimson Avenger's original cloak. Just some really nice touches that they've done with the character since. And we have previews of what's to come. We have an announcement here to be continued in Stargirl #1. The interesting thing that the rumor is that Jeff Johns will not be writing this version of Stargirl, so it's interesting to see him pass the torch off to somebody else in writing this character. We also have a certain team there called the Justice Society with 3 pages of art by Brian Hitch, written by Jeff Johns. Interested to see what happens there. The most wonderful little extra in here. We have 3 excusal letters that are written by Breck Bessinger. As Courtney, asking to be excused so that she for her superhero activities, and also just 2 other extra little bits, because again, this is a large size issue. An artist that is very much associated with these characters is Jerry Ordway, and we have a wonderful 2-page spread there of the original 7 Soldiers of Victory. And because they're characters that have an incredible legacy and sometimes comical turns have happened, we have Fred Hembeck drawing almost all of the Golden Age characters. This book was fun from the word go, but it also sets up some very important, serious stuff. Loved it. And I even think for people, this is a good entry point for Golden Age concepts. I really do, because you have the modern in Stargirl that provides the bridge to it, and it does so in a way that I don't think would be off-putting. Really, really good stuff. And the Green Arrow reveal is so cool. It's the kind of stuff that, as a longtime DC fan, I just eat up. I'm dying to tell you what it is, but I don't. I know it matters more to me than anybody else, but it's just so cool. And that it came in an unexpected source, I think, is especially cool. So that's awesome. The last book I wanted to talk about. I know you got it, Steve. Did you?
I haven't had a chance to read it. I'm so far behind on all my DC stuff. It's not even funny. Last year, to
the top of the stack, because it's a one shot, and so you're not mired to a long arc that you have to read. Put it to the top there.
Yeah, because one of the things that was a blessing at the early part of lockdown was the fact that because no new comics were being published, I could catch up on all of my old DC piles, which, of course, since comics came back, I have not had a chance to do. So
I know nothing.
Let's take a look about
nothing of DC piles.
Oh, what are you talking about? That's just 1 month worth of
I got through it all. Just also quick, I just have to say, this is an APB. If somebody explain this to me, I don't understand what's happening in this issue. Strange Adventures #10. I don't understand.
We just need to have Brian back, because Brian, has been reading it and following along. Like, he's the guy to explain Strange Adventures.
I reread the 3 previous issues just to get a grasp, and I'm so confused.
I'm loving it.
I'm not saying I'm not enjoying it, but I'm confused. All right. Well, we're going to start wrapping an episode of the Comic Book Bears up, and we do so with a segment we call the Woofs of the Week segment. In the bear community, if you find a fellow attractive, you woof at him, and we do something very similar here. This is where we spotlight something which may be a comic book, but it may also be a film or a TV program or a charitable initiative, anything other than charitable initiative, anything, whatever. You get the point. Anything that we think you, fair listener or viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start, as I always do, with Steve. Steve, what is your Wolf of the Week?
So I'll just do really quick on Dark Side of ... And I know I've talked about it before, Dark Side of the Ring. Amazing show, really great. It's on Vice TV, or you can watch it on Hulu, and it's also on Discovery Plus. You can get all of the previous seasons. Right now, it's in the middle of the third season. It's got about 7 episodes out so far. It is on a hiatus now. We'll be back in September with the rest of the season. Also, that's out and has had 5 episodes is Dark Side of Football, where you get to hear all of the really and get to see in this documentary style series some really great stories that go with the modern era of football. I think it starts out. Was it the first episode that was about the history of the Raiders, basically? That I thought
that was the
fantastic.
second. The first episode I want to say was about Ocho Cinco.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, right. Yeah. About Ocho Cinco and, explaining him and why he changed his name and then changed it back eventually. But, just very, very interesting kind of hearing about the myths of football or interesting stories in the history. If you're a big fan of 30 for 30 from ESPN, you would definitely love either of these series. If you're a wrestling fan, Dark Side of the Ring is amazing. It really dives into everything. The original promoters, wonderful characters and wrestlers from the past. Really explains kayfabe if you're not really don't really know what that is, and also will make you alternately want to punch Jim. Oh God, start to the scene. Jim Cornette. You will want to punch Jim Cornette in the face for being just such a and then also cry with them. So there's so many things, so many emotions with Jim Cornette. But love that show. And also coming soon. Don't really know exactly when, but hopefully soon.
July 15th.
July 15th. Dark Side of the 90s.
Also, since there is a lag between the audio and when we actually do this, I think it's worth mentioning because of the date that we're talking about this, when you did bring up Dark Side of Football, that today was the announcement from the Raiders defensive lineman Carl Nassib that he is gay. He publicly came out. So it's, we had some promise with Michael Sam, but he never made it to the regular season. So he is the first openly gay player playing in regular season NFL play. And this is huge, and as of, again, Caleb and I are both big football fans, and this means a lot. This is seismic.
Is this his third or fourth season playing professionally? Because I think he was with the Browns first, and then he's been with the Raiders for the past couple of seasons.
Yeah, he's not a rookie. This has been
he's been
he's got his bona fide.
Yeah, he was a third round pick, I think, when he was brought up. So.
I love Steve doing football talk. Oh my God, this is so wild.
The thing is,
let's see where this leads.
If I'm given facts, I can spout them back. I don't necessarily have to sit there and watch a 4-hour game.
All right.
Over to commercials.
Yeah. All right, Caleb. You tell us about your wolf of the week right now.
Well, so my wolf of the week goes out to a mutual friend of ours, Bill, and that is our friend Arnie. Number one, just because he's a beautiful man and a great guy. I love him to death. He's one of my favorite people of all time, but also because he's just genuinely thoughtful. Arnie, if you know Arnie, he is huge into huge into a lot of things. He's busy, but huge into the action figure game. Collects these things like there's no tomorrow. Is like if a Marvel Legendary Wave comes out, he's looking for it and got it by the end of the day. I am not an action figures person. Like I collect comics. That's kind of my thing. But Arnie knows that I have a deep and powerful love for Scarlet Witch. That's Wanda's my girl and has been for a long time. And so he, as a kind of just, hey, like you made it through your second year of law school. Congratulations. You're, doing great work. He sent me the Marvel Legendaries Scarlet Witch or Marvel Legends Scarlet Witch based off of the WandaVision. So I keep it posted up. Actually, normally it's going in my pie cabinet that I've have as kind of a statue and figurine haven that you can't see off screen. That's where that will live. But the Marvel Legendary things or Marvel Legends are just cool in general. But the fact that he thought he sent that to me, it's stand up, dude. I love him, and it shows the kind of a roundabout way the power of the positivity of the internet. Like if it hadn't been for groups like you mentioned earlier, Bill, the 11 o'clock groups, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. That's how we met. That's how I met Arnie. That's how I met Trent. Steve and Brian is through these linkages of just comics friends and fans, finding niches and little places on the internet to like be positive about things, and we all kind of gravitated towards that. And then here we are today. So thank you, Arnie, and just in general, thank you to all the people who are awesome online.
Awesome. We heart Arnie, and one thing we should mention about Arnie is he's on a quest to get every issue of ASM, and he's getting very close. Yeah.
Literally, only has one more issue.
Yeah.
You have the entire collection of Amazing Spider-Man.
How many issues is that?
Oh Jesus, I don't know what the current run. So it's close. The last anniversary issue was 800.
Yeah,
and I think at the end, I think there was like an 801, and then with the Spencer run and Nick Spencer's leaving ASM, we're positive podcast, so that's positive news. So I think he's leaving with 875. So we're approaching a 900 anniversary.
Yep.
Then when you factor in the annuals, gotta be like around 950 or so. Okay, my wolf of the week goes out to a film. I went to a film in a movie theater this past Sunday. I know Steve and Caleb, you've already taken that step. This is the first time. I really thought it would be Black Widow. That would be my first time back in the movie theater. But the surprising wider release of the Sparks Brothers documentary from Edgar Wright meant that I was in a movie theater seat this past Sunday. And the Sparks Brothers covers the history of the group Sparks, which is, I guess this is probably the best one. This is Russell and this is Ron. They're brothers. Okay. And goes through their entire history. They formed as a band as Half Nelson in 1969. And one thing that was really interesting is, with rock documentaries, every once in a while you get one that will just cover like the peak years, and then for 20 years they did this. Not this. They covered every aspect of this band's career, their ups and downs, their disappointments, their surprise triumphs, their influences on other acts. Some great people are interviewed, some surprise people, some surprise revelations about the group itself. It definitely feels like an Edgar Wright film. It definitely has that sensibility, but at the same time still married to the narrative of a rock group that has had a long history. I really hope that this is a case like Anvil, the story of Anvil, that this gives a lot more significance to this band when they start playing live again, and has much bigger venues. It's been very difficult to see them in the States over the last 35 years. I basically seen like almost every opportunity I could. And if people are worried that I'm like, a Johnny Come Lately, this is their first album. This was the reissue on Bearsville that you had to get on German import. Mid 70s albums that were fantastic. The very rare CD of interior design that they put out on Rhino. So I'm a fan. I've been a fan for a long, long time. That doesn't matter when you go see this film. I went with my partner and our neighbor Beth, and those two had really no familiarity with the group. They absolutely loved it. It's in much wider release than was anticipated. So if you can, please go see this film. It did very well at the box office. 275,000 for a documentary is pretty dang good. Especially just coming out of a pandemic. Steve, I know you've been talking about seeing it. Definitely put that on some kind of priority, because it really is a wonderful, wonderful telling of a story that needs to be told.
I think I'm going to try, because it is playing at one AMC that's nearby, so an hour drive away. I could go and see it there. Or it is playing locally at the Art art house cinema, which is back open in Winston-Salem.
Good to hear.
Which I might be able to go see. And if that's the case, I'll be able to bring my husband and probably some friends from our queer book group, because we were talking a lot about the Sparks movie at our last meeting. So,
Yeah,
might,
really was
might have something
wonderful.
this week to see it.
And again, there's with this film and also Summer of Soul, there's a lot of Oscar buzz documentaries around a rock film. So that's refreshing, because I think some of them are some of the more interesting documentaries, because they're some of the more interesting stories.
Right.
And I'm so glad this film got made. So glad. And I've seen them 5 times, which is about as many opportunities I've had since 1983. The first time was seeing them open for Rick Springfield, and my best friend Stu and I really didn't tell anybody we were going to see a Rick Springfield show, because you're front that you're cool. But just an amazing act, just subversively some of the most interesting music that has come out in the last 50 years. And I'm really glad that there's a spotlight on them in this particular fashion. It's really great. I want to thank everybody that tuned in. We had a lot of people, judging from the comments. I see John Westhoff. I see Tony Gilkinson, and again, John Runyon and Dave Toby and Vince Tenebro. We have had a bunch of people on here. Anthony Comita. So thanks everybody for tuning in, especially on a Monday night. This is we haven't done before. And I hope I'm not leaving anybody out. Jay Yaspa is there too. So thanks everybody for tuning in. And again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. I don't know what the hell that is. The Comic Book Bears, the podcast. Rebecca, it's not called a podcast. Oh, Rebecca. Okay. All right, take 2. Again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book. Boy, is it late. Comic Book Bears podcast. If you want to download us, please do so by doing it through iTunes. You can also listen to us through Stitcher Radio and some of the other podcatching platforms. And if you want to write to us, please do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. Until next time, I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Steve Morey.
And I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
You're going to hear a woof and an explosion, and we'll be back real soon. Take care, everyone.
Woof.